In a world of anthropomorphic animals, Belle Lablac is the only known human. On her quest to find answers about her identity, Belle is warned by a beast man that this is his last mission. The day before, around Lake Chaser, inhabitants saw a great commotion in the water and gathered to see what was happening. One citizen believed the river had risen, causing the current to bring a sea seed that was now blooming and spreading poison, trying to turn the fresh water into salt water. Some bulls had already been affected by this condition, so the rats decided to ask for help from a nomad, but instead the nomad sent a girl, which caused some distrust among the population, because this girl was known for being expelled from City Park for causing trouble. Moreover, she tends to attract all eyes wherever she goes, as people had never seen anyone of her kind before. As soon as the envoy stepped into the crowd, everyone observed the human from head to toe, looking for any fur, horn, or animal ears that could indicate where this being came from. But the more they looked at her, the more confused they became about her origin. Used to this kind of reception, Belle Lablac introduced herself as the envoy sent by Master Cyan Lablac. The elder rat responsible for the help request stepped forward and declared himself the guardian of the weather wheel tower. He then pointed to the center of Lake Chaser, where according to him a creature with arms as firm as tree trunks and a body immune to swords and spears was spewing poisonous ink from its mouth. Belle's master had said it was probably a Negroni, but from a distance it was impossible to be sure. Regardless, the girl planned to get closer to find out, especially since flower flesh was her favorite food. Upon saying this, Belle could hear the inhabitants calling her a wild beast. Unfazed by the insults, she placed her heavy bag on the ground and removed part of her clothes to be as light as possible, then slid into the water in a way that shocked the entire crowd. As she approached the creature, she was grabbed by one of its tentacles and pulled underwater. Shortly after, the tentacle that had grabbed her was ripped off by Belle and thrown to the surface, but the job was not yet done. The Negroni, upon losing one of its limbs, realized this was no ordinary challenge and emerged from the depths, displaying its enormous stature. Faced with this, Belle drew her sword, and the pressure in the air caused by her handling was so firm that it vibrated her body to the point of planting her feet on the wooden floor. The beast attacked with its brutal strength, and Belle had difficulty dodging the blows, which were not only powerful, but also extremely fast. For this reason, she commanded her sword Runding to sing. The command evoked a pinkish energy from the weapon resembling petals. Obsessed, Belle Lablac kissed Runding. After the sword song, the wielder's movements became lighter and more assertive, and the cuts were fatal to the Negroni's hardened scales, which previously could not be penetrated. Now Belle was slicing each tentacle like a sharp axe cutting wood. Overcoming the initial obstacles, the warrior gained access to the monster's trunk and with unimaginable dexterity made 3 slashes to the enemy's neck in a single motion, causing it to roar in agony as blood gushed, reddening the water. Along with the severe injury, the smell of salt water reached Belle's nostrils, and soon the deep cuts on the Negroni's body burst, causing a poisonous rain. With that, the lake's inhabitants ran to save their food from the salt, while the beautiful and feared creature grabbed the human with its last tentacle. Belle Lablac questioned why the Negroni had come there, and it responded with tears in its eyes, saying it only wanted to return to the sea, its home. Unfortunately, it could no longer fulfill its desire, and all that remained was to spread the seeds of its body before its death. Hearing this, Belle apologized and cut the tentacle that was holding her. The movement caused the girl to fall, and with the gained weight in the air, she plunged her sword one last time into the lost creature. Despite the devastation caused by the battle, the elder rat promised to send the reward to the human as soon as possible, and she asked to take a seed and a tentacle of the Negroni home because, as she had said, she loved flower flesh. Once again, the surrounding animals were shocked by the bestial behavior of that species, but the guardian of the weather wheel tower did not oppose the heroine's wish. Later, on the way back, Belle lamented that the inhabitants of Lake Chaser would destroy all the Negroni's seeds, so she threw the one she saved into a river, thinking she might need to fight in the region where the current would carry the seed someday. Finally home, Belle greeted her master Cyan, who was trying to light the fire using the friction of 2 objects, even though it would be much simpler to use magic. In a way, this slightly irritated the apprentice, as did the fact that her master had sent her to defeat the Negroni instead of going personally to save the region without causing any damage. To avoid souring the mood and the food, Belle threw the tentacle on the table and showed it to the beast man, who praised the clean cut of his pupil. However, he noted that it was possible to sharpen the blade even more and focus all her concentration into a single strike, something Belle had yet to learn. Nevertheless, he believed that eating the defeated's corpse was a way of honoring the dead, even though a Negroni was not just made of flesh, but also a resistant leather material Belle planned to use to make shoes. While eating, Cyan put different sauces on the plate, causing the girl to complain that he was ruining the flavor, but he saw it differently, as this mix caused an explosion of feelings. Since the leader was so sentimental, the pupil asked him to cook next time, but she was completely ignored. At the end of the meal, Belle questioned why the Negroni had left the sea, considering it had expressed a desire to return before dying. Cyan believed it was trying to fulfill its purpose as a flower, its simple mission to spread seeds that were not just flowers. After all matter in this world mixes with all others. Nothing is created, everything is transformed. After dinner, the girl clears the dishes from the table while the master smokes a pipe that emanates his magic. Saddened by what happened earlier, Belle laments that the lake dwellers were afraid of her, wishing that Cyan had gone in her place. The master believes he has nothing to teach a plant, therefore it wouldn't serve as an enola, whose role is to instruct others. Belle, eager to leave this place, wants to continue her search for beings of her own kind. However, the beast man emphasizes that he has never seen another human in his long life. Belle believes that at this rate the army of the insatiable void will take her away sooner or later. According to her master, these are beings who can no longer enjoy the world, and Belle sees it as her end if they catch her. To this day, she has never had the privilege of feeling she belongs to the world because she has never seen anyone like her, while other races despise her, which is cruel. Curiously, Master Cyan identifies a certain nostalgia in his pupil's words, a platonic love for her hometown, the desire for utopia, or the painful inability to love oneself and the place where one is. The nostalgia for what was never lived is a yearning for self-knowledge. Belle asks for a way to cure this nostalgia, so Cyan advises her to journey to the land of Schwert, the country of the sword. Although there are no humans there, she might find a world truly her own. But first, she needs to go to Park City to complete the challenges and become a nomad. Shortly after, as she gets out of the bath, the pupil reflects on the master's words, who said that traveling is putting her existence at stake, a game where no one can help the girl, not even her enola, because no one, no matter how close, is Belle Lablac. With this in mind, the girl knows that one day her life with the teacher will end, and that will only be the beginning. Above all, the idea of a world where she belongs irresistibly attracts her. Meanwhile, Runding shines like the night, and the briefest touch of its user transports Belle to fragments of her childhood memories, when the anthropomorphic beings were even crueler to the child. Some even said she was born from a stone, and beast children tormented her simply for being different and possessing extraordinary strength. In this distorted memory, Belle embraced a couple she thought were her parents, but the two had animal ears. Distraught, she ran through the crystal blue night towards a castle, traversing the long paths of that labyrinth of rock and iron. During her wandering, she finds a chained sword in a dirty storage room, seeing it as a friend. Upon touching the weapon, Belle feels for the first time the warmth of that pink energy in her hands, something that would accompany her for life. Without a second thought, she steals Runding from the castle and flees past the guards until she reaches a moon that awakens Runding's desire to pierce the world. One of the guards stops the child, and once she refuses to let go of the sword, she is imprisoned with it in one of the castle cells. When she wakes up next to Runding, Belle Lablac is hugging the only friend who understands her in this world. At dawn, the human scares away the rats, delivering the reward to Master Cyan's door. This time, she decides not to blame anyone for her loneliness. With money in hand, Cyan comments that food will not be a problem for a while, but his student doesn't care about that. Determined, she declares she will go to Park to become a nomad. With that, the master asks her to bring her sword so he can teach her the final lesson. According to Cyan, one cannot become a nomad without receiving a curse. Depending on the life that bears it, this curse can take many forms, and it will be Belle's first trial, haunting her as she follows her path. These curses are passed through nomad blood, so the master cuts his finger with Belle repeating the gesture. Thus, the two touch their wounds, and the master asks the purpose of the apprentice's journey. She expresses her desire to know her roots, meet people like her, and finally connect to this world. With that said, the procedure ends, and Cyan advises Belle to embrace embrace this curse, always hoping that one day it will become a blessing. As he spoke, the beast man's face distorted into a magical expression, and Belle realizes he is disappearing. Cyan says he is no longer necessary in the apprentice's life, and that this way she will not discover his secret motive. Finally, he wishes Belle Lablac to visit places he never managed to visit. In a way, Belle feels betrayed by the master, as she watches him dissipate in front of her, venting her frustration by stating that he is playing with her mind. On the other hand, this is Cyan's role as Enola, and fulfilling this purpose is the reason for his existence. In that dark time in a dirty and forgotten cell, Belle was told by Cyan that her parents would not come for her because he would be responsible for her from now on, teaching the child to use the sword she insisted on not letting go of. Runding carries the spell Erawan, whose true meaning is utopia. In the end, Belle states that she loves Cyan, then uses Runding to attack her master and fulfill her purpose. In her origins, Belle was born from one of those stones as if they were eggs made of a purple rock. Reflecting on who she is, the girl presumes that her homeland is the sky and finds this a great cruel joke. A human with roots in the heights, as if she couldn't reach herself. At the same time, a man watches the girl in her sleep with a magical clock in hand. When the girl's cord glows, she wakes up in the quartz forest where the O'Croc is already blue. Despite it having been a long time since Belle last came to this place, she doesn't miss it at all. Suddenly, a young Rabidia tugs at her clothes. Startled, the girl offers the rabbit some of her tea because encountering such a creature along the way is a sign of good luck. Still, she doesn't think it's a good idea to wander around with this animal, so she leaves her mug with him and says goodbye. After a long walk, Belle Lablac arrives in Park City in the land of Schwert. As she approached the population, she encountered what she always had to deal with throughout her life: the prejudice of all those anthropomorphic beings. Walking through the boulevard under West, Belle is impressed by the city's beauty and hustle and bustle. With a smile on her face, she decides to eat. Inside the tavern, the same old scenario unfolds, with the beast men referring to the human as the traceless. The bartender, although not as prejudiced as the others, thought the human was a mermaid from the castle who had gotten lost. In Belle's opinion, it might even be better because no matter where she comes from, people always look at her with disdain. Putting that aside, she orders something to eat and an iced flower tea. Aware of the foreign girl's unease, the bartender informs her that everyone here follows the law of the theme, where each individual is destined to be good or evil. If the girl doesn't follow this order, she could end up dead. Belle thinks she is being mocked, so she demands not to be called little girl and states her name. The beast man apologizes and introduces himself as Haggis, owner of Amaretto. He then asks what the visitor knows about the land of Schwert. Belle explains that she learned that Park City is divided between the good top dogs and the evil underdogs, with the good living inside the castle and the evil outside. With that, Belle gets to where Haggis wanted to lead. The law of the theme cannot be sustained without this division, and no one challenges this balance and gets away unscathed. Therefore, he advises the human to find out which side she is on as soon as possible. Still, she states that she doesn't need to go through this process because she will soon be leaving the country to become a nomad, which is why she came to Park. The beast man believes that God will never allow that, and since the girl is from the interior, he explains that it is not the king of the castle who truly rules this country but God. At that moment, a severe headache strikes the human and distorted images of her master come to her mind. Haggis asks what happened, and she explains that she had visions of Deus Ex Machina, but doesn't really know what it means because she heard about this story from a heartless fool a long time ago. However, these visions reveal to the human that she killed someone but don't explain who or why. In the midst of this, to Lablac's surprise, the Rabidia from earlier is thrown into the tavern for causing too much trouble for some city residents. Haggis asks what the guys intend to do with this child, and one of them explains that the brat disappeared into thin air and gnawed on his sword, causing them a lot of trouble to catch the rabbit. With that said, Lablac assumes they are evil solists. Without delay, the beast men draw their swords and state they will feast on Rabisha fillet today, especially because killing such a creature can make them famous in the region, and drinking its blood will make their swords unbeatable. However, before the worst could happen, Lablac throws the bench she was sitting on to knock down the smartest solist and draws Runding. As if she were Cyan, she asserts that if you can't differentiate being bad from doing bad, you don't deserve a sword. Faced with this, the solists attack the girl, and although she easily handles them, some magic prevents her from retaliating retaliating, reminding her of when Cyan cursed her. Lastly, Asahi tries to attack the Rabisha, and just as Lablac was about to intervene, Haggis steps in and says everyone has understood how strong and skilled she is, and it's enough now. Besides, he notes that the beast men's swords will never grow again. On the contrary, they will only wither because this is a one-way path. Outside the tavern, good top dog solists gather, prompting Haggis to ask the girl if she has a dog tag, a license to fight. Obviously, she didn't, so the bar owner tells her to run away immediately because she got herself into trouble without a license and they won't let it slide. Thus, seeing that the rabbit had fled, Lablac leaves some coins to pay for what she consumed and surrenders to the authorities. Being carried by a giant turtle with a saddle on its shell, she is taken to the castle and comments to Runding that they are returning inside the city after so long. Being very young, Lablac doesn't remember anything about this place except finding her sword. Thrown into a cell inside the castle, Lablac hears from a representative that her case will be investigated when the candle beside her goes out. Until then, the human will remain imprisoned. Thinking back to her childhood, she recalls being locked in a room very similar to this one, and now she can't cut anything because of her curse. Anyway, she knows this is her first trial and agreed to it when it came to light. Her Enola was very clear about this, and for that reason she can only accept her fate. Back then she waited for someone to come and get her out of prison, but somehow she doesn't remember who it was. The responsible person's face is distorted by magic and unrecognizable. The problem is she is no longer a child and no one will come for her, and staring at the door won't make it open any faster. On the other hand, Runding possesses this power, and it's through her that Lablac gains access to her own freedom. Once this is done, she asks the person in charge of the cells to summon a soloist named Gaff. Panicked, the small creature has no choice but to comply with the request. Back at the Amaret, a boy asks Haggis if someone broke his sword, and he explains that his sword has withered a long time ago. In fact, it was the swords of some soloists who took a beating and are recovering in the guest room. As he says this, the old man turns and realizes he was talking to Adnis, someone he hadn't seen in ages and didn't expect to find there. Adnis asks to speak with the soloists, so Haggis takes the opportunity to ask if the boy went to see his family, but Adnis makes it clear he has no intention of doing so. As soon as he climbs the stairs, screams from outside alert them to the arrival of the army of the insatiable void. According to Haggis, they probably smelled their own kind, so he believes someone from Park City will join this army today, someone who can no longer enjoy the pleasures of life. Meanwhile, Lablac is received by Gaff Shandy after he arranged for the human's absolution, as it was a personal request from Cyan that he take care of his apprentice. Furthermore, he hands her a dog tag and asks her to engrave her personal spell on it. Lablac asks why an elite soloist would do all this just to help his master, and he asks back if by any chance the human harbored any resentment towards Enola. She replies no, especially because he made her forget absolutely everything about him. But even so, she refuses the dog tag because she's going to become a nomad. Gaff emphasizes that the girl cannot start her journey without first making a contract with the king, so she will have to serve a period as a soloist in this land. Speaking of which, Belle laments that she has been cursed because it affected her sword, and now she cannot cut anything, while Runding was able to cut through anything with his blade, be it a mere flower or the strongest man from the most remote tribes. In response, Gaff finds it concerning that the human mentions flowers and humans as if there were no difference between them. To him, that is a curse. Accustomed to hearing how bestial she is, Lablac lightly mocks his words and emphasizes that her sword is like a glove when she touches things, and that the friction against Runding's blade always has the same weight, as if there were no distinction between any material. Anyway, considering that Runding was affected, Gaff asserts that the dog tag will be very useful on her journey and can help solve the mystery of the curse. Thus, Lablac reluctantly accepts the gift. As if by chance, the rabbit appears again, gnawing on something next to the human, so she thinks he came to thank her for being saved, making Gaff realize who caused all this confusion. Anyway, he feels honored that Belle has a Rabisha accompanying her as a visitor. Soon the two say goodbye, and the beast man informs her that he will arrange an audience with the king for her. As she heads to the courtyard, she hears a song from the agriculture musicians and feels a great sense of nostalgia because she used to practice her instrument a lot, even though her music never made anything grow. Gaff then asks if Belle will visit her parents, and she replies sadly that she still cannot see them. Later, since the elite soloist soloist arranged this place for the human girl to stay, she takes the opportunity to take a luxurious bath with Rabisha. In the bathtub, she discovers that he is male and asks where he wanted to go after all. Since the animal cannot speak, she just gives him a hug. Near the audience, Gaff sees the dog tag with the inscription Lablac, which means uncommon, and comments to the girl that the first to register that name was Cyan. Suddenly, she hears a voice saying that as a short musikerin, Belle must entertain God to complete the contract because the king carries God's will and the doors of the journey will only open in the presence of royalty. Soon Lablac is taken to the throne room and the voice explains that the court of justice consists of 3 halls forming the crest of the land of Schwert: the dance hall, the throne room, and the sword arena. Before her is revealed Yggdrasil, the sword tree god, a cancerous sword that has been growing since the dawn of history. The priest king resides with God and has 2 faces, top dog and underdog, because the world reveals its dual nature through the form of the king. As King Rawhide manifests and welcomes the visitor, Lablac notices that the tree has never looked at her unlike the king. Therefore, she unsheathes Runding and points it at the tree, but nothing changes. By doing so, Lablac stirs the murmurs of the court of justice and Gaff announces that a student of a renowned Enola Cyan Lablac wishes to participate in the contract ritual to become a nomad and find her roots as she is alone in this world. Having said that, the king grants her the opportunity to make a contract and asks the visitor to name her instrument. Then Lablac raises her sword and announces the work of Dram, the famous sword composer Runding. Rawhide states that the visitor's skills as a Schwert musikerin will be tested in a duel against one of the 4 champions Cur Royale, the one whose sword was shattered by the human.